Welcome back. Today we're diving into one of the most dramatic relationships in history, Angela Deem and Michael Ilasanmi. Their story started as an unlikely romance that captured viewers' attention around the world. But what began as a hopeful international love story would eventually turn into one of reality television's biggest relationship disasters. Angela, a strong-willed grandmother from Georgia, and Michael, a younger man from Nigeria, first connected online. At first, many people doubted their relationship. The age difference was significant. They lived on different continents, and cultural differences created obvious challenges. Yet, despite all the skepticism, the pair insisted their love was real. When Angela traveled to Nigeria to meet Michael in person, fans immediately noticed their chemistry. However, they also noticed something else: constant arguments. Even during their earliest appearances, the couple seemed to spend as much time fighting as they did enjoying each other's company. Trust quickly became a major issue. Angela often worried that Michael might not be completely honest with her. She questioned his intentions and frequently wondered whether he truly loved her or simply wanted a chance to move to the United States. Michael repeatedly denied those accusations, insisting that his feelings were genuine. As their relationship continued, viewers witnessed emotional confrontations, jealousy, and explosive disagreements. Angela's fiery personality often clashed with Michael's calmer approach. What seemed like small disagreements could suddenly turn into massive arguments. Friends, family members, and even fans began asking the same question: could this relationship actually survive? Despite all the warning signs, Angela and Michael remained committed to each other. They pushed forward with plans for a future together, determined to prove their critics wrong. The couple faced obstacle after obstacle. Visa problems created stress. Long-distance communication caused misunderstandings. Cultural expectations about marriage and family added even more tension. Yet somehow they continued to stay together. For many viewers, their relationship became one of the most fascinating stories in the franchise. Every episode seemed to bring a new challenge. Every reunion special revealed new conflicts. Still, Angela and Michael kept insisting that love would eventually overcome everything. But behind the scenes, cracks were already beginning to grow. The trust issues never fully disappeared. The arguments became more intense. The pressure of living separate lives on different continents was taking a serious toll. At the time, nobody knew just how dramatic their journey would become. What looked like a difficult relationship was slowly turning into something much bigger, a marriage headed toward disaster. And that was only the beginning. As Angela and Michael continued their relationship, many fans of the US began noticing something troubling. Instead of becoming stronger over time, their relationship seemed to become more unstable. Every step forward appeared to be followed by two steps back. Yet despite the growing list of problems, the couple continued moving toward marriage. One of the biggest issues was trust. Angela constantly questioned Michael's loyalty. Something as simple as a social media notification could spark a major argument. If Michael spoke to another woman online, Angela immediately became suspicious. Even when there was little evidence of wrongdoing, she often feared that Michael was hiding something from her. Michael, on the other hand, felt trapped. He repeatedly tried to prove that he was committed to the relationship, but no matter what he did, the accusations seemed to continue. Many viewers noticed that he was frequently forced to defend himself, even during situations that appeared relatively harmless. The pressure began affecting every aspect of their relationship. Phone calls that started peacefully could quickly turn into shouting matches. Family members and friends watched from the sidelines as the tension continued to build. Then there was the issue that fans discussed more than almost anything else: Michael's dream of moving to the United States. Critics questioned whether his desire to immigrate was the real reason he stayed with Angela. Online discussions exploded with theories. Some believed Michael truly loved Angela. Others believed he was simply waiting for his chance to obtain a visa. Angela was clearly aware of these accusations. In many conversations, she directly confronted Michael about his intentions. She wanted reassurance that he was marrying her for love, not for an opportunity to build a new life in America. Michael consistently denied the claims. He insisted that he wanted both, a future with Angela, and a chance to live together in the same country. But the doubts never completely disappeared. Meanwhile, cultural differences continued creating new challenges. Angela expected certain behaviors from her future husband, while Michael's views were often influenced by traditions and expectations from Nigeria. Simple discussions about family, respect, and marriage frequently turned into heated disagreements. The couple also faced enormous stress because of the visa process. Delays, paperwork, interviews, and uncertainty placed additional pressure on an already fragile relationship. Every setback seemed to increase frustration on both sides. Yet despite all these warning signs, Angela and Michael remained determined to get married. Many fans were shocked. Some viewers believed the relationship should have ended long before reaching the altar. Social media was filled with comments predicting disaster. People questioned whether love alone could overcome so many unresolved issues, but Angela wasn't interested in listening to critics. Throughout their journey, she often made it clear that she would fight for the relationship no matter what others thought. Michael shared a similar attitude. He continued standing by Angela, hoping they could eventually build a stable life together. When wedding plans became more serious, there was a brief moment when it seemed like things might finally improve. The couple talked about their future, their goals, and their dreams of living together. For a short period, optimism returned. However, beneath the surface, the same problems were still there. The trust issues hadn't been solved, the arguments hadn't stopped, the suspicions hadn't disappeared, and the emotional wounds from years of conflict were still affecting both of them. Looking back now, many fans believe these were the clearest warning signs that the marriage was entering dangerous territory before it even began. The relationship had survived countless fights, but survival wasn't the same as happiness. Angela and Michael were about to take the biggest step of their lives together. They hoped marriage would fix their problems and create a fresh start. Instead, it would eventually lead them toward an even bigger crisis. After years of arguments, trust issues, and endless obstacles, Angela Deem and Michael Ilasanmi finally reached the moment they had been fighting for, their wedding day. For a brief period, it seemed like they had beaten the odds. Despite all the criticism, despite the long-distance struggles, and despite the countless people who believed they would never make it, Angela and Michael officially became husband and wife. Many fans hoped marriage would bring stability to their relationship. After all, a large part of their stress had come from uncertainty. They had spent years dealing with visa problems, family disagreements, and the emotional strain of living thousands of miles apart. Now, perhaps things would finally become easier. But reality turned out to be very different. Almost immediately after the wedding, old problems began resurfacing. The trust issues that had haunted their relationship from the beginning never truly disappeared. Angela still questioned Michael's behavior. She still worried about who he was talking to online and whether he was being completely honest with her. Meanwhile, Michael continued trying to reassure her, but by this point the cycle had become familiar. Angela would become suspicious, an argument would begin, Michael would defend himself, and eventually both sides would end up frustrated. Fans watching from home noticed that marriage hadn't changed the dynamic at all. In fact, some viewers believed the conflicts were becoming even worse. The distance between them remained a major problem. Although they were legally married, they still weren't living together permanently. Michael remained in Nigeria while visa complications continued creating delays. This meant they were still relying heavily on phone calls, video chats, and social media to maintain their relationship. And that was where many of their biggest fights happened. Small misunderstandings often turned into major confrontations. A missed phone call could create hours of tension. A delayed response to a message could trigger accusations. Every disagreement seemed larger because they weren't physically together to resolve problems face to face. As time passed, frustration grew on both sides. Angela felt exhausted. Michael felt misunderstood. And viewers could see the emotional strain becoming more obvious with every appearance. Then another issue began drawing attention. Many fans started questioning whether the relationship had become emotionally unhealthy for both people involved. Online discussions became increasingly divided. Some viewers supported Angela and believed she had legitimate reasons to be concerned about Michael's behavior. Others felt Michael was constantly being placed under pressure and scrutiny. Social media debates became intense. Every new episode sparked fresh arguments among fans. Who was really responsible for the problems? Was Angela being overly controlling? Was Michael hiding something? Or were both of them simply trapped in a relationship that had become toxic over time? The answers depended on who you asked, but one thing was becoming impossible to ignore. The marriage wasn't bringing peace, it wasn't creating stability, and it certainly wasn't solving the issues that had existed for years. As more time passed, Angela's frustration became increasingly visible. She wanted progress, she wanted answers. Most importantly, she wanted Michael in the United States so they could finally start their married life together. But the immigration process continued moving slowly. Every delay created more stress, every setback increased tension, and every new obstacle seemed to push the couple further apart emotionally. What made the situation even more complicated was that both Angela and Michael had invested years into this relationship. Walking away wasn't easy. They had fought through countless challenges to reach marriage, and neither wanted to admit that things might be falling apart. So they kept trying, they kept arguing, they kept making up, and then arguing again. The cycle continued over and over, yet beneath the surface, something important was changing. The love story that had once inspired hope was beginning to look more like a battle for survival. Many viewers started wondering whether the relationship had reached a point where neither person was truly happy anymore. And unfortunately for Angela and Michael, the biggest challenges were still ahead. Because while they were struggling to hold their marriage together, a series of events was about to unfold that would completely change everything and push their relationship closer to collapse than ever before. By this stage of their journey, it was becoming increasingly difficult for anyone to argue that Angela and Michael's marriage was healthy. Years of arguments, accusations, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion had created a relationship that seemed to be running on hope alone. For a long time, both of them had believed that once Michael finally reached the United States, many of their problems would disappear. They would no longer have to rely on video calls. They would no longer be separated by thousands of miles. They would finally get the chance to live like a normal married couple. But when that possibility started becoming more realistic, a new problem emerged. The damage from years of conflict had already been done. The trust between them was weaker than ever. The constant arguments had left scars on both sides, and neither person seemed capable of letting go of the past. Angela continued demanding answers about things that had happened months or even years earlier. Michael often found himself defending old decisions, old conversations, and old misunderstandings. Instead of focusing on building a future together, they were constantly revisiting old battles. Fans noticed that their interactions rarely looked happy anymore. Even simple conversations could become tense. A small disagreement could suddenly explode into a major confrontation. At times, it seemed like both of them were waiting for the other person to make a mistake. The relationship had become a cycle of suspicion and frustration. What made the situation even more difficult was the public attention surrounding them. Because their relationship played out in front of millions of viewers, every argument became a topic of discussion online. Every emotional moment was analyzed by fans, critics, and social media commentators. The pressure was enormous. Neither Angela nor Michael could escape public opinion. Whenever a new episode aired, thousands of people shared their thoughts about who was right and who was wrong. Some believed Angela's fears were understandable after everything the couple had been through. Others argued that Michael had spent years trying to prove himself and was never given enough trust. The debate seemed endless. But regardless of which side viewers supported, most people agreed on one thing. The marriage was in serious trouble. As the months passed, the emotional distance between them appeared to grow. Even when discussing their future, there seemed to be less excitement than before. The dreams that once united them were now being overshadowed by resentment. Years earlier, they had fought to stay together despite every obstacle. Now it felt as if they were fighting each other more than they were fighting for the relationship. The turning point came when cracks that had been visible for years started becoming impossible to ignore. Questions that had once been pushed aside suddenly demanded answers. Could they really trust each other? Could they ever move beyond the past? Could their marriage survive after so many years of conflict? For many viewers, the answer was beginning to look obvious. The relationship appeared to be reaching its limit. Every major relationship has moments that test its strength. Angela and Michael had survived many of those tests before, but this time felt different. This time, the problem seemed deeper, the frustration seemed stronger, and the hope that once held everything together appeared to be fading. Even some of their most loyal supporters began wondering whether staying together was actually helping either of them. Instead of bringing happiness, the marriage seemed to be creating constant stress. Instead of providing security, it was creating uncertainty. Instead of strengthening their bond, it was pulling them further apart. The couple who once promised to prove everyone wrong now found themselves facing the possibility that their critics had been right all along. And then came the developments that shocked the entire fan community. News began spreading that the relationship was facing its biggest crisis yet. Suddenly, discussions about arguments and trust issues were no longer the biggest story. Something far more serious was happening. The marriage that had survived years of obstacles was now standing on the edge of collapse. And once that process began, there would be no easy way back. After years of drama, endless arguments, emotional confrontations, and attempts to save their relationship, the marriage between Angela Deem and Michael Ilesanmi finally reached the point that many fans had predicted from the very beginning. The relationship was no longer struggling, it was falling apart. For years, Angela and Michael had managed to survive one crisis after another. Whenever a major problem appeared, they somehow found a way to keep moving forward. That ability to stay together despite overwhelming odds became one of the reasons viewers remained fascinated by their story. But every relationship has a limit, and eventually they reached theirs. The warning signs had been visible for a long time. Trust had slowly disappeared. Communication had become increasingly difficult. Instead of solving problems together, they often found themselves trapped in the same arguments over and over again. What made the situation particularly sad for many viewers was the amount of time and energy both people had invested. They had spent years fighting for the relationship, years defending their love against critics, years trying to prove that their marriage could succeed. And yet, despite all that effort, they were now facing the reality that love alone might not be enough. As reports of serious problems continued to emerge, fans began realizing that the couple's future together looked more uncertain than ever before. The online reaction was immediate. Social media exploded with discussions. Some people felt sympathy for Angela, others supported Michael. Many believed both individuals had made mistakes. But regardless of opinion, most viewers agreed on one thing: the relationship had become one of the most turbulent stories ever featured in the 90-day franchise. What started as a romance between two people from different parts of the world had transformed into years of controversy, emotional conflict, and public scrutiny. By this point, many fans were no longer asking whether the marriage could be saved. Instead, they were asking what would happen next. Would Angela move on? Would Michael start a completely new chapter of his life? Would they ever find peace after everything they had experienced together? Those questions became the focus of countless discussions among fans. For Michael, the situation represented a major turning point. For years, much of his public identity had been connected to his relationship with Angela. Now, people wanted to know who he would become outside of that relationship. Meanwhile, Angela faced her own challenges. She had invested enormous emotional energy into making the marriage work. Watching it unravel in such a public way was undoubtedly difficult. Yet, despite everything that happened, their story left a lasting impact on the franchise. Very few couples generated as much discussion. Very few relationships created as many unforgettable moments. And very few storylines kept audiences talking for as many years. Whether viewers loved them, criticized them, or simply watched out of curiosity, Angela and Michael became one of the most recognizable couples in 90-Day Fiancé history. Their journey included hope. It included sacrifice. It included laughter, heartbreak, anger, and disappointment. Most importantly, it served as a reminder that relationships require more than love to survive. Trust matters, communication matters, respect matters. Without those foundations, even the strongest feelings can struggle to endure. Looking back, many fans still debate exactly where things went wrong. Some believe that trust issues destroyed the marriage. Others point to the constant distance between them. Some argue that years of unresolved conflict eventually became impossible to overcome. Whatever the reason, the ending was clear.